In this video, we're going to review some common command options that we can use to make our lives simpler when managing our config files. We're also going to demonstrate how we can add comments to them as well. So let us begin by first looking at the running config, and let's review some of the stuff that we're seeing within here. So once again, this is the running configuration that's on the system, and something that may not be clear to you what it is are these bang marks. So these bang marks are your comment characters in Cisco, and what we're using them for here is kind of like spacing between the different groupings of commands. Now we can scroll through this file, as we've seen before, by pressing the Enter key to do so at a line at a time, or the space bar for a page at a time. Now when we look at this page right here, we're going to see something that's known as a parent-child relationship. So when you think of a parent-child relationship, just think of it as meaning that this configuration right here is applied to just this right here. Now something else about the parent-child relationship that's helpful to you to understand is that when you delete the parent, you're also going to delete the children. This is also referred to as a section of our config file. So now something that we'll commonly configure at the CCNA level will not only be our interfaces but also found at the bottom of this file. So I'm just going to press the space bar multiple times to go all the way to the end. And what we're going to see is what is known as our console port and also our VTY lines. Now this is at the bottom of the file, and we would have to press either of those keys multiple times in order to get here. And whenever you're doing your configuration, it's always a good idea to actually verify inside the config files that the configuration is actually being stored, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate some command options that we can use to make our lives much easier when viewing the configs under them. So we're first going to take a look to see these options for the running config, and the first one that we're going to illustrate is right here, interface. So we said that the interface is a common thing that we're going to configure, and if we just wanted to pull out the configuration that pertains just to that interface, then we can do so with the following command, and down here we can actually see just that section. We can also use output modifiers to do basically the same thing. So if we take a look once again, we can see that there's this thing that's known as output modifiers, and over here we're seeing what is known as a pipe character. Just know that your pipe character allows for inter-process communications, and what we're going to do with it is we're basically going to take the output of one process and have it be applied as an input to another. Now basically at a much higher level, if we kind of take a look at the different options, just know that these are going to perform specific things so that we can actually pull out things from the config file based on a pattern. So your patterns are going to be case sensitive, and one thing that we'll do here, and basically we're just going to illustrate three of these. So we're going to illustrate the begin, we're going to also illustrate the include, and also the section. Alright, so first let's do the section because that's basically what we did up above. So if I try to pull out for fast Ethernet and I want to do 0, 0, 0/0, we're going to see that this command is going to do the same exact thing, except without all the garbage that you had at the beginning and at the end. It simply just pulled out the one section. Okay, so something else that we can do is we can do, like for example, an include. So your include is going to show you the lines that include the pattern. And what we're putting here as a pattern is we're basically just saying, look, show me all the fast Ethernet ports that pertain to module 0. And what we're going to find is that it's going to include 2 ports. You've got 0 and 1. Okay, and we can also do a begin. So why don't we begin this one here at the VTY lines, which is at the very bottom. So let's do a begin, VTY, and here we can see that. So now you can see how this is going to make your lives much simpler. So now let's take a look and see how we can, add comments to the config files as well. So now anytime you're actually doing something to the system, right, making some sort of changes, things like that, you always want to document them. Now you can either do this externally or you can do it internally to the system. I typically like to do it internally because it prevents me from having to, go somewhere to actually access them, right, search through files, things like that. This is more specific, it's more user friendly if they, if those documents are actually right here. It's also useful in not only identifying things to you, but also to others, right? And this is kind of like, best practices 101, right? All right, so first thing, what we're going to do is we're going to add comments to our config files, and let's actually first take a look here. So we got inside of our backup directory. So we created this directory in previous videos so that we could store backup configuration files. And inside of here we can see that we got one file, and the file name is using a timestamp. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're actually going to add a comment to that. But first, let's actually take a look at the end of this file. So I'm going to do a more, and I'm going to do a lot of copying here to save some time. So we're going to do this and this, and then we're going to use our good old output modifiers. So over here we're going to use the begin. So what we want to see is at the end. So I'm just going to begin it at VTY lines, and I just want you to take note of this end down here. So what this end means is it basically says, okay, this is where all of your configs actually end, and anything that's after it we're not going to read in as a command. So basically it's just instructing your system, as such. Okay, so now what we're going to do is first let's take a look inside the backup directory, and the reason for that is because I just want you to take note of this. So we are using a timestamp on the name. However, that's not always going to be the case because this isn't very user friendly, right? I mean, it's very useful, but some people may actually shy away from this, right? Now this timestamp over here, this is great, but anytime you make changes to this file, it's going to change the timestamp. So one thing that you can do is you can actually put a timestamp under here as a comment so that you know exactly, when the configuration was applied or something along those lines. So we can do that by issuing a show clock, and what we're going to do is we're going to, if I take a look over here again, we're going to append, and what we're going to append, or where we're going to append this to, is we're going to actually put this inside of that file. So let me just do this again and come in over here, boom. All right, and you'll see kind of like this white space, which is an indication that it worked. So let's actually verify it. So I'm just going to hit the up arrow key here a few times, and down here we can actually see that timestamp. All right, so now something else that we can do is we can actually add our own notes under here. Now with this is going to seem kind of like, programming language-ish. That's because it is. So we don't have really any text editor that we can open up our files with, but we do have something that's known as a tickle shell. So we can access that shell by issuing this command right here. And what we're going to do first is we're going to create a variable. So the variable is ch, and this is going to stand for channel. And what we're going to do is we're going to open a channel, and we're going to specify where we want to open that channel to. So let me just copy this back right here. So we're going to open a channel to this file, and we need to adjust the pointer, and that's going to be to append. So that's where we're going to say that we want to write to. I'm going to press enter here, and now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add our notes. So we're going to do this by using puts. So we're going to say puts, then we have our environment variable, which was just defined above, and now we're going to add our notes. And I'm just going to put over here my notes. Nice, short, sweet, simple. Okay, and now we're going to close the channel just to, free everything back up, which is always a good idea to do. Close the channel, and now we're going to quit the shell. So tickle quit. All right, now to verify. So let's scroll through command history here. And let's actually verify that we now have our notes down at the bottom, and we can see that we do. Now just one final thing. So I'm saying that this is not going to be read in, so let's actually just verify that. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to copy the file, which is right here. So I'm going to copy this into the running config, and then into run. And what we shouldn't see are any errors coming through here due to these being bounced out. And even if it did get bounced out, it wouldn't hurt the system at all. It just would say, I don't understand that as a command. But as I said, it's not going to be read in because it's after the end. So now here we can see that these weren't read in as commands. And just one final note that you want to kind of do as a best practice. You want to make sure that, when you're making these notes into the files, these comments, that you want to make sure that you make a backup of the backup. You don't ever want to do this on a production file where you didn't actually back up even the backup.